It's getting me freaked out, quite frankly, how fast these things are happening and how fast the narrative that we've pieced together is really coming together and exacerbating. You know, it's hard for people to stay on top of what's happening. I devote time to it each week towards the end of the week. I mean, I try to stay abreast of what's happening every day, but then really dig in towards the end of the weekend in preparation for my conversation with you and other people. It's the most important thing I can really do. And I think a lot of the things that I'm digging to find in various sources, I don't find elsewhere. I don't find by watching Fox News. Every morning I get up, have a cup of coffee, and go through my emails with Fox News in the background, and I don't hear any of the stuff being spoken about. I certainly don't read about it anywhere on mainstream channels, and so I think it's important to stay abreast. But one of the things that these 8 stories since we've last talked, 8 things that really stuck out to me, they follow a similar theme, a similar pattern that we've talked about for a few years. So I'll just jump right in and go through a few of them, or all 8 of them, and we can, I think people will see just how important the things that we've been talking about really are, and how things are unfolding in such a manner that in just a few days' time, 8 very relevant things pop up and I think are worthy of discussion. The first being something that you really haven't heard too much about, and I don't understand why not, but you got the Russian Foreign Ministry responding to Lithuania's blockade of Kaliningrad. This is, again, I mean, we're getting really close to declarations of war all over the place with Russia, and they are trying to, or are making a blockade of all of the rail transports. And you're talking things like coal, technology, metals, construction material, and this is really, really, really upsetting Russia. Was the Fed recently admitting that the unrealized losses on their bonds, on the asset side of their balance sheet, stood at $330 billion at the end of March. This wipes out its balance sheet equity of $50 billion, more than 6 times over. So since then, bond yields have risen another almost 1.5%, which is increasing their loss. So when you look around, there are cracks everywhere. And whether it be with cryptocurrencies, whether it be with the Fed balance sheet, whether it be with inflation, whether it be with the dollar being really forsaken or abandoned, or the whole drive of this Eurasian corridor, usurping the dollar for settlement. These are big, big deals. And yet people are more concerned about the committee to impose criminal charges on President Trump for the Capitol riot deal. There's so many more important things happening right now, very, very important things that could shape the way the U.S. and the dollar are viewed globally for years to come. And I think the media here is asleep at the switch. So while it's not my job to come out and tell the world of all of these things, I just want people to know that in 1 week's time, I found 8 stories, all of which somewhat are very symbiotic to the things we've been talking about, but only grow to, or show the growing trouble, the growing severity, the growing reality that if you hold all your assets in dollars, you're destined to go broke. If you hold cryptocurrencies, you hold them on exchanges, you are destined to go broke. And if you're not preparing and de-dollarizing the way the rest of the world is doing, you're destined to go broke. And I don't mean to be doom and gloom. I don't mean to sound pessimistic. But if you can't see what's happening on top of everything else we've talked about, gold's reclassification and all of the Belt Road Initiative and all of the things that we're seeing, the challenging of the petrodollar, all of these things happening faster and faster and faster and faster and faster. We're 8 stories in a week come out, I think you're missing the boat. Gold and silver are wealth. They are wealth. They are not tools of investment. They are wealth. And it's really important people wake up, because sooner or later, one of these 8 stories is going to break. It's getting me freaked out, quite frankly, how fast these things are happening and how fast the narrative that we've pieced together is really coming together and exacerbating in severity. One other point I'd like to make that isn't a news story per se, but to me it is. You know, when we talked about originally about the countries that repatriated their gold from the New York Fed, a lot of them were the European countries that are not, that have their own currency. They might be Euro member countries, but they still have their own currency. So they're like Poland and the Czech Republic and Hungary as an example. And it just so happens that those three countries have increased their gold holdings almost tenfold, each of them this year from last year, over the last year. So you're seeing a drive by countries, China, Russia, and India. They're all massively accumulating it. And, you know, people say, well, why isn't it breaking out in dollar terms? Typically, gold is always the last currency. The last move is in dollars. And looking around, you see we're very close to all-time highs in most other currencies, or many of the other currencies. But the dollar, as you know, like you were saying, the king dollar, well, it's the nicest house in the crappy neighborhood, so to speak. And so it hasn't quite broken out yet in dollars. But you're seeing other countries, I think, that are really making their move away from the dollar, and instead of increasing their holdings in dollars in these risky, scary times, they're in fact doing it in gold, and with a 10 times increase over the last year, all three of those countries. So, and Russia, India alone, from May to May of last year, they've increased their gold holdings by 677% from last year May to this year May. So you're talking about a big shift into hard assets away from the dollar. And I think this is the same type of movement we're seeing continuously. It's only accelerating, and now it's accelerating as well into trade routes and trade agreements, all sidestepping and usurping the dollar. So whether that means selling dollars to buy gold or striking arrangements to settle trade agreements for other commodities in currencies other than the dollar, this is the beginning of the end of the dollar as the singular world reserve currency. And that is a really big thing. If something like that happens, the movements of the Fed will prove to be meaningless, and it will be more along the lines of the market dictating which way interest rates go, and the market dictating what happens to our equity markets, our bond market. And this is, I think, what a lot of the big players are preparing for. So anyways, that's just my 2 cents on that. If you're not a contrarian, you're a victim, in other words. And I think that's kind of what you have to do right now. You have to be a contrarian and take your family's best interests at hand, and not follow the herd, because the herd is not getting the right scoop, not getting the right information. And the herd is still waiting for the Fed to engineer a soft landing. I'm not even counting on the Fed to do anything at all but jawbone.